Every farm has a story. When it comes to dairy farming, these stories are often only heard by the animals raised, the land stewarded, and the family that makes it all possible. Join me, Dairy Gal Val, as I interview individuals from across the dairy industry, both within the United States and across the globe, discussing topics like farm management, the food industry, ag business and technology, and most importantly, their farm story. This is the Dairy Hour Podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Dairy Hour Podcast. I'm your host, Val Lavigne, or Dairy Gal Val, and I'm joined today with one of dairy's leading ladies, Marilyn Hershey. How are you, Marilyn?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I'm really excited to have you on the podcast and pick your brain about all things leadership and being a woman very immersed in, dairy leadership, things like that. So I'm very excited to dive into this episode. If you want to start by just kind of giving us a little background of who you are and what you do.
Sure, thank you. And you know what? It's great to be here. I always like talking about dairy and talking about what I do and talking about, more importantly, the work that's getting done. And, we like anything and all things dairy. So it's great to be here. Thank you. And congratulations coming up on almost a year of doing this. So that's
Thank
awesome
you.
now. And so Dwayne and I have a dairy farm. We're southeast Pennsylvania. We're about an hour west of Philadelphia. And we milk about 850, 900 cows, somewhere around there. It's large for Pennsylvania, but not large when you compare it across the country. So it's great to be involved in dairy. It's not an easy time right now, as we all know, but it is a lifestyle that we love and have been doing it for a long time.
Awesome. And so did Dwayne and you start the farm yourselves? Is it a generational farm from one side of the family, or how did you come about dairy farming?
It is generational on both sides. I like to tell the story that my grandmother milked cows. They had 40 Guernseys that they milked. She was the oldest of I think there were five siblings she had, and they had to milk their cows by hand before they went to school, and she was part of that rotation. So, she was a farmer. My great grandparents were farmers. So I come from a long line, and so does Dwayne. And his parents moved to Chester County in the mid 60s. And it wasn't far. They didn't move far, but it was a different area. So they started on this farm in the mid 60s. And his parents, Art and Joyce, were very involved in the farm for quite a while. And then in the 80s, he went to the state house. And served as a state legislator, was very influential in agriculture policy in Pennsylvania, and still very, very well respected for what he did. But their farm name was Our Joy, and Dwayne and I kept that. So we are Our Joy Farms. And we were in partnership with them for a couple years and then purchased the farm from them. My father is still involved in our dairy operation. When he retired from dairy farming and then retired from truck driving, he came back to the farm. So he will be 96 in a couple weeks, and he is at the farm nearly every day.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's what keeps him going every day. Got to go check on things at the farm.
I believe it is, yes.
Definitely. Well, I love that. And I love that you come from a long line of farmers. I would not want to arm wrestle your relatives hand milking cows before and after school every day.
I know, right? Yeah.
Those are not the people you want to pick for arm wrestling, because they'll get you.
Exactly.
So, I guess to kind of jump into leadership, you are definitely no stranger to being a leading lady in agriculture. If you want to talk a little bit about your leadership positions.
Sure, thank you. Several years ago, a friend of mine that asked me if I'd be interested in serving on the National Dairy Board. I was involved in promotion right around the time I got married. Before that, I was Dairy Princess. And so always had a heart for dairy promotion. But as I was raising the kids, kind of stepped back and was 100% immersed in the farm. It was Dwayne and I, as we went through the expansion, put in the parlor, we had employees, but really it's been a 50-50 go from the start with Dwayne and I with our dairy farm. So I was very immersed in that. And as I started getting older, he said, I think you would enjoy this. This is something that you have always had a heart for, and you should try it out. And so I applied for the National Dairy Board, and man, trying to think when it was, probably about 7 years ago.
Okay.
And became involved actually 10 years ago. It would have been about 10 years ago, because I was on the National Dairy Board prior to being involved, being chair of DMI, and I'm on my 6th year of that. So just, enjoyed the dairy board, enjoyed being on DMI, and just haven't appreciated the opportunity for leadership in those positions. It's certainly a team. It's not a one-person job by any state in the means, but so it's really a team effort, but it's awesome to be part of the team.
Definitely. And I enjoy your leadership, and I enjoy, as a member of National Dairy Board, getting to interact with you and, see you at those meetings it's great. Definitely.
It's great to have you on, Val, because
Well, thank you.
we are always looking for young leaders and people, emerging leaders, to come on, because I'm not going to do this forever, and so we have to have a bench on the board, and so it's great to have you on.
Thank you. So I guess, you know, what challenges have basically come up as far as being a woman in a leadership position in what has traditionally been a man-driven world? Have you come across any challenges, or what are different things that have
Oh
come up?
yeah, always have challenges. And I think the challenges are going to arise no matter who you are, what gender, what your opinion is, you're going to have challenges in life. But, when I first became secretary of National Dairy Board was, when I got on the National Dairy Board, I ran for secretary in the next year and was able to obtain that position. I was the only woman in the officer group. And so they were all guys and a lot of them had been there for decades. And so, really stepping into, they knew how things were run, and they knew how things went. Thankfully, I stepped into a group that respected me and let me speak up. There were times that I felt like I had to kind of inject myself into the conversation, but also felt like I was highly respected. My opinion was never pushed to the side. And so, I would say it was a team around me as well, even though I was the only woman. The next year, there was another friend of mine who got on the officer group at DMI. And so we were palling together. Now I would say it's almost close to half on the
That's
officer.
what I was going to say. It's definitely taken a turn from when you were the
It
only
has.
female on
It has.
on all the boards. Yeah.
And I would say it's quality. There's
Yes.
quality on the board. It's, I said from the start, I don't want to be elected into any position just because I'm a woman. I want to
Agreed.
be elected into a position because people think I have the skills to be able to be effective and make a difference. And I think everybody on the board would say that. Nobody wants to be handed a position just because of a particular gender.
Mhm.
But I would like to be respected. And I feel like I feel like I am. And I feel like the men on our board are very respectful to women, and nobody is pointed out what gender you are in the
Yeah.
boardroom. And actually no one is, with DMI. DMI is a board made up of two boards.
Yep.
So it's UDIA, which is your local representation, and that's National Dairy Board, which is your national representation. And both of those boards sit in a room, and that is DMI.
Yep.
And we don't know who's who. You know, I don't when I'm running a meeting, I don't know who's what it, you know, what affiliation is
Yeah.
answering this question. I don't care. It's we're all in this together.
Yeah, I definitely agree with sitting in the room and not knowing who's who, just as a newer member of the board, trying to figure out who's where and different things like that has definitely been a challenge, but a good challenge. And it helps you get out there and know more people and strike up a conversation with people that you may have not chatted with before. So I do definitely appreciate that. And I love that it works together as just one big board. Makes for a lot of efficiency, which is really
It
great.
does. It
And I'm
does.
glad to hear that I love the take of, I want them to elect me because they feel that I'm right for the job, not because, I'm a female or not because I'm this or that. And I definitely think that that's a really great stance to have as far as any elected position goes. It should be elected for whoever's right for the job, not just because you fit a certain, stereotype. So I really like that you
Exactly.
said that.
Exactly. And I think we're better in the industry than we were.
Oh, 100%.
For sure, because I mean, I think people still run into situations, but I think overall it is recognized that there's a lot of women that can contribute to what's going on in the dairy industry.
100%. And it's even changed since I graduated college and became a milk inspector within the state of New York. I was a female, and a lot of the farms that I was inspecting were not used to having a female in that position. And some of the old time farmers really struggled with me giving them suggestions or telling them they needed to do a certain thing. Uh,
Oh, I'm sure.
yeah,
I'm sure
so
they
but
did.
it definitely has changed though. And now the position that I once held within that company, it I don't know as if parts of the farms that I was inspector for have since had three other female inspectors. There's been one male in some of the farms, but
Wow.
um
Yeah.
it's just funny because it was such a swing for them to get used to, and now like it's just all female dominated. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's funny to look back and see that.
That's
And
great to
it's
see.
definitely a new way of thinking and a new way of farming, which is
Hmm.
it's good to see that progress within the
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
so how do you balance your responsibilities? You and your husband obviously have a decent sized farm. I mean, 850 cows is definitely not a small farm by any means, but then you're obviously really busy with your role as chair in DMI. So how do you balance those things?
You know, for a while when I first started out, I still was 100% involved in the calves, raising the calves, which is really, calves, computer work, HR, office work were always things that I was involved with. And and now it's completely different
Mhm.
with taking on the chair role. And so, I had to give that up, but it was time. I would say, I was noticing as I spent a lot of years feeding baby calves, and my patience was starting to run a little thin. So it was nice to be able to hand that over to someone else. And we have a great crew here right now who are doing the work and leading the way with our farm operation. But really, I could not have this position without Dwayne's support, and 100% he is behind me. He is my counsel. He's my rock. He's who I turn to a lot with questions. And if I'm going through something, he is um he is right there for me.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I would say it is a lot to balance, but he helps me in that balance.
definitely. Yeah, so definitely, having a supportive spouse when you're going to take on these big aspirations is a huge, huge benefit. I mean, that's one thing that I've definitely learned through all of the roles that I have had the past few years is, if I didn't have that home support
and, my husband out there saying, we've got this at home, take it away, like, go for it, spread your wings, you know, go do
Absolutely.
what you're meant to do. That's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I just can't imagine trying to do it without that support from home. Or if
Right.
you have someone at home, like, who's always negative about the things that you're doing, that
Hmm.
I feel like that would just wear and tear and not end well. So
Well, and I wouldn't feel like I am as effective without that support for sure. Yeah.
100%. So tip, supportive spouse, family, whoever you have at home, very important.
Yes.
So I guess, could you tell us about a memorable achievement, something, that you've done through your work at DMI? And I guess for those of you listening, if you don't know what DMI is, it's Dairy Management Inc. I don't know if we actually established the acronym. Trying to be good about not using too many acronyms, but anyways, what's something, in the past that has happened at DMI that you've been a part of that has been a huge, huge accomplishment for you?
I would say one of the most influential times for me at as chair has been when when I started participating internationally, and I traveled to Rome to the Food and Ag organization and was able to see and hear firsthand the opinions and the biases that they have against American agriculture, the stories that they were defining us with, and just very eye-opening experiences, understanding that we have to be more aggressive internationally, or our farming practices are definitely in risk. And a lot of it is a misconception, and you hear what it's like across the ocean, and if you don't hear from that actual person, you assume that it's true. And so there were a lot of misconceptions that were being talked about internationally, and especially at the Food and Ag organization. And so becoming involved in them, US DEC is now very, very involved in and has a strong plan of action, as well as Global Dairy Platform, two very strong organizations that work tirelessly to make sure that the truth is out there on our farming practices and what we need, and the importance of exports, the importance of trade, the importance of relationships outside of our borders.
Definitely. And definitely agriculture is so much more on a global scale now than it ever was. So keeping that momentum going is going to be really important for us as, individuals in United States agriculture, whether it be through dairy or other commodities. We're definitely playing on more of a worldwide market, and it's important to keep those relationships and make sure that people, you know that United States agriculture is here to stay, and know that, especially us dairy farmers, we mean business, and we're here to make a really great sustainable product, and we're here to, make sure that that continues into the future. So
Oh,
definitely
absolutely.
definitely
Absolutely.
neat to hear about your experiences overseas and doing some fun international. I mean, it's work, but it's fun to go to these different conferences, meetings, things like that around the world, and just to get, see and get input from everyone else it's definitely eye-opening, and it's really neat that you're out there making those relationships for US dairy. So I appreciate.
I enjoy it. I never enjoyed traveling before, but I really enjoy it now. But I tell you, I come home from those trips exhausted because
Yes.
they run us pretty hard. They have a pretty good reputation for doing that. But it's also, we're not there to vacation.
Yeah.
We're not hitting the beach. We're not touring here and there. I get to see a place that maybe I'd like to go back with Dwayne, but
Yep.
it's not a vacation. We're going to meetings, and we'll have receptions here and there. We're meeting people, we're meeting buyers, meeting potential customers and building relationships, meeting with government officials. So it's a different kind of trip internationally, but it is really fascinating to see the different cities across the globe and see how they use dairy. Every country uses it differently, but we have so much opportunity. And food security is a big deal. So, trying to make sure these countries have food to eat.
Especially nutritious food. So
Yes, absolutely.
definitely important. So what, with that being said, how do you see the future of dairy evolving, and what role do you think that checkoff is going to play in that?
I think checkoff will continue to play a strong role in dairy. When you look at the consumption rate that people in this country, we're eating more cheese, we're eating more dairy. Cottage cheese is a huge deal right now. We're indulging in ice cream. We still are really trying to focus on whole milk in schools. How can we make sure that children are getting the nutritious products that they need in schools that are delicious? And so, there's a lot of focus right now on dairy consumption in the United States, and it's been going well. And when you look at fluid milk, whole milk is the category among fluid milk that is doing well. But we need to continue to get it out there. But internationally as well is a part. It's going to take both global and domestic sales to help us continue on and farm the way we do, because we need the global market, and we also need the domestic. So focusing on both.
Definitely. It's like a well-balanced machine, just making sure that you have all your bases covered. And I think that that's something, even within the most recent years, I think that that's something that Checkoff has done a really great job of finding that balance and making sure to hit those specific points within the system to ensure that, US dairy is first and forefront and all that right in the foresight of people's minds. So that's very important. And then, what do you want? You said, obviously you are loving your position as chair of DMI. What are some of the legacy things that you want to leave behind, when you do finish your terms with DMI? What are some things that you kind of would really like to see take off in the future?
Oh, wow. That's a really strong question. And I think each one of us have our own certain areas that we love and like to focus on. And, I mentioned school milk, and there is not a meeting that we don't have, that we don't talk about school milk. School milk is talked about at every single meeting that we have. And right now we are beheld to the dietary guidelines, and we have oversight from the USDA on that. And so there's certain things we can do. There's certain things we can't do. But we do have groups like NMPF and National Milk Producers Federation and International Dairy Foods Association that can lobby for us on our behalf at the Hill. We can educate. We can go to Washington and educate, which we're doing in the future, but we cannot go and lobby. And that is a checkoff law. That is the way checkoffs were set up, and that's fine. But right now there's the oversight for the dietary guidelines, and so we are restricted in what we can do and what we can say concerning things against the dietary guidelines, so whole milk. But I will tell you, school is a passion for every farmer, because they know that that's our future generation and that's our future drinker. And if they're going to have a horrible experience in schools, then they're not going to be reaching for milk when they're older. And we know how important it is. We know that nutritionally, there's nothing that matches up to it. And so we have to figure out, and we also have to figure out how to relate to other cultures. So we know through studies and science that culturally, lactose does not always work for some people. And so, we have to figure out how do we provide that that drink, how do we provide that milk that is a quality milk that they can also enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. And over the last however many years, lactose free milk has really exploded in the marketplace. And I think that the taste and the quality of it has dramatically increased. Some of my favorite milk that I grab, like I'm not lactose intolerant, but some of my favorite milk that I grab is actually lactose free. And that's just because it's what I'm looking for in a product. It just happens to be lactose free, but it just opens up the door for so many more people to enjoy milk without having, any lactose intolerant effects, things like that. And on the school milk front, it is funny, just my children being raised on whole milk, they go to school and they're, especially now that they understand, that school milk can't be whole at the moment, they're just so funny because when they were little, they'd come home and they'd be like, the school milk, it just doesn't taste right. It's so watery. And I was like, yeah, it's just because you're so used to whole milk because that's all that I serve, here at our
Exactly.
house. It's just funny because kids that they know their milk and they're very particular about their milk and they go to school and they're like, but it's just not that good. And it does, as a dairy farmer, it makes you see, that's like my firsthand look inside of a school, but how many kids aren't getting the experience of knowing that, they're getting that whole milk at home? How many kids are not getting
Absolutely.
that whole milk
Yeah.
at home, and they're not gonna get, the taste for drinking, delicious, nutritious whole milk as a kid? And, it could affect them obviously into their teenhood and early adulthood, potentially on through the rest of their life. And it's sad to think that that could be the case. And obviously I'm hoping that things change. And as someone who does a lot on social media, the amount of people that I see that don't understand that whole milk is not 100% fat is just,
I know.
it's
Fascinating.
mind blowing. Just that's a common fact for us farmers. And it's just a very big disconnect between the consumer and the farmer, or even, the people in the processing plants. So definitely definitely a big initiative. Yeah, for dairy farmers in general right now is 100% school milk, and ensuring that the quality and flavor, and hopefully at some point whole milk will be available for children in schools. So jumping kind of back towards leadership a little bit, what advice do you have for someone, who really aspires to become a leader, wants to, take on different roles within agriculture as a leader? What advice do you have for them?
First of all, I would say have confidence in yourself. I think that's something women struggle with, is self-confidence. And I know there were people that helped me with that along the way. I mentioned Dwayne, but there were also leaders in the industry who, when I talked to them about being involved in DMI and starting out in some leadership roles, I was really encouraged. And there were times I doubted whether or not I could, could I really do this? Would people really listen to me? When I first started on the board and I would turn on my microphone to say anything, my voice shaked and cracked and I could barely talk. I was like so nervous. And so it was just, have confidence in yourself, and then take steps. Don't feel like you have to jump to your end goal right away. Take steps along the way, and taking those smaller steps will get you there. It's a journey. It's a journey. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but it is a journey, and you can make a difference in whatever position you're in.
I like it. And I like that you, explain it as a journey, because that's definitely what it is. And, that's something that I've even learned as, a younger, not that young anymore, but as a younger
Oh,
female
you're young.
within dairy. I take opportunities if I have an opportunity offered to me, if I feel like it's something that I have an interest in or something that I feel like I could gain an interest in or learn a lot from, I 100%. And that, I guess, goes back to having that supportive home, is saying yes to things, because you never know where they're going to lead you. And if you don't say yes, you'll never know what's on the other side of that. So
Absolutely.
I firmly believe that. So now that we've hopefully inspired everybody, I want to jump into one of my favorite segments of the podcast, and that is just some fun rapid fire questions. Just to get to know a little bit more about you, because it just makes life more fun.
Sure.
So Marilyn, I've been dying to ask you this question just because your last name is Hershey. So, with the last name of Hershey, and especially being from Pennsylvania, where Hershey is, what is your favorite Hershey's candy?
Oh man, definitely the Reese's peanut butter cup, without a doubt.
The classic, or do you go like the big cup or some of the funky?
I like the dark chocolate, and it's hard to
Ooh.
find.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if I've ever seen that, and now I'm gonna have to keep
it's
my
hard
eye
to
out
find.
because that sounds right up my alley. So
Yeah.
there. Now the question has been answered. What is Marilyn Hershey's favorite Hershey candy? So are you a morning person or a night owl?
Maybe neither.
We're cut from the same cloth on that one.
I find myself more of a morning person because I was, I got up to feed calves early for how many years.
Yeah.
And, if you're going to be involved in this board and then check off, you have to be a morning person, because sometimes our meetings start, we'll have breakfast at 6 o'clock. So, you have to be a morning person if you're going to be involved in the dairy board.
You got to be an all the time person.
There
and that's
you go.
You were saying earlier, you come home from the meetings and you're exhausted. And I feel that, because even, Greg will be like, why are you so tired? You were just like sitting in a meeting for a few days. And I'm like, my brain was going. Yes, my brain was going the entire time. Like at home, sometimes I can just put myself on autopilot and get stuff done. But like when you're at a meeting, your brain is like on the move all the time, and you're constantly thinking, just thinking and thinking and thinking and listening and absorbing and doing all the things. So
Absolutely.
I definitely get that. So favorite book, or like what genre do you tend to gravitate towards for reading?
Not many people know this, but I was involved in children's literature before I became involved at DMI. And I love a good middle grade historical fiction. And it's fun, it's light. Out of the Dust is one of my favorites. It's a middle grade novel that's written in prose, and it's about the dust storm.
Okay.
Very well written. I love it. Joyce Moyer Hostetter is one of my favorite authors. She does historical fiction for middle grade. So I do like a good nonfiction, but I also like fiction. I do like to read. It's great. I also have a picture book I wrote years ago called Oncology Stupology, I Want to Go Home. And it's because our son had leukemia. He's doing well now, has 3 kids. He lives in Bend, Oregon. He's doing great. But when Robert was in the hospital, I noticed there's not a whole lot out there for kids that have cancer. So I wrote a picture book.
Well, that's amazing. I definitely have never known that. And now I'm going to have to look that up and find it.
There you go.
And
you'll have to buy it through me, because I don't think it's on a site. I need to start working on that in all my free time.
Yes, you do. That would be wonderful. There you go. So there's your, when you retire from the board, just gonna go back into author mode.
I am. I have some things I've been working on.
Oh, I love it.
Haven't been recently because I've been busy with other stuff, but I will absolutely pick that back up again.
Good. I love it. That's awesome. See, you learn something new about people all the time.
There you
Uh,
go.
and then with your position, obviously you said you do a ton of traveling. While you may not get to do a ton of touristy things while you're traveling, what is the most interesting place that you have traveled thus far?
I'm asked that a lot by different people, and I think I say a different place every time. Um, each place this world has some very, very unique features. Each city and country we've been to has been wonderful in its own way. The people are beautiful. I think Japan actually is one of my favorites. Chile is another one I loved, and I would say both because of the people.
Very cool. Actually, I'm trying to remember. Alex Peterson was on a few episodes ago, and I'm trying to think Japan might have been one of his favorite places too, but I'm not 100% recalling it off the top of my head right now. So I guess with the most interesting place you've traveled, you obviously get to try some very interesting foods. What is the like craziest thing you have ever eaten?
Egg ants.
A what?
Ant eggs of
Oh,
ants. Yeah, we had that. Ant eggs. We had that in Mexico,
oh,
along with crickets.
okay.
The crickets were fried. The ant eggs really didn't sit well, and the next morning I was pretty sure they were hatching.
Oh gosh.
I
That
was
is
I was not thrilled with the eggs, but
no, I'd
I
be
did
like,
try
oh,
it.
thank you. And
I
then
did try
tuck
it.
it on my
Yeah.
lap or something in a napkin. I'd be like, yep. And I'm just gonna starve for the day. Like it's fine. We're just not gonna eat that. Yeah, that's takes a brave woman to eat ant eggs.
I think they needed a lot more cheese.
I mean, everything's better with cheese. We can
Yeah.
agree on that. And oh gosh, now yeah, ant eggs. That's crazy. And then I guess out of all the places that you have not been, what is your bucket list place to visit?
Africa.
Africa?
I've been to Rwanda. I've never been to Kenya. Um, so I don't know if Dwayne and I will get there someday, or, if Derry will take me there someday. I have no idea. But Kenya is definitely on my bucket list.
That's a that's a fascinating one. Have you been on like did you get to go on safari when you were there last, or do you plan on going on safari or
Excuse me.
you're good?
We were in Africa. We were in South Africa when Dwayne was on the Land O'Lakes board of
Mhm.
directors for quite a while. And when he was on, we went to South Africa with Land O'Lakes. And he and I did take a few days and took some personal time and went on a safari. That was fascinating.
Yeah, that's a bucket list item for me. So
Yeah.
I think my mom and I really want to go and we want to wait till the kids are older and be able to bring them. So
Oh,
that's
they would love it.
hopefully a bucket list thing. I know my husband will never go, so he'll be like, "I'll take care of home. You go. Go ahead. Please
There you
come back." That's how that would go.
go.
Oh goodness. Um, and then towards the end of the episode, I like to ask a question that was left by a previous guest on the podcast, not with anyone in mind, but just kind of a fascinating question. So, if you could have dinner with one famous person, dead or alive, who would it be and what would you ask them?
That's a really hard one. That's a really hard one.
They're meant to
And
make you think.
yeah, you know what? I would say I have two. I mentioned my writing time,
Mhm.
and Madeline L'Engle is one of my favorite authors. I would love to sit down with her and just talk to her about what inspired her to write some of the stories she did. As we look at dairy, you know, that's a tough one for me. It's a hard one to pull out.
Yeah.
who I'd want to sit down and talk to, maybe Ronald Reagan. He would be a
Okay.
good one to talk
Yes.
to. He came from California, a very strong agriculture state. And I would love to know, after coming from California, what is his view of agriculture across the country? Because he would have seen and understood a lot of what's happening across America.
I like it. See, you were at a loss of words and you knocked it out of the park. So that's great. And Marilyn, I like every guest to leave with their little piece of inspiration, what drives them, what inspires them to, be awesome every day. And what is your piece of advice?
I have a strong faith. I come from a family of generations of strong faith, and I rely heavily on my faith and prayer, and that keeps me going, gets me through a lot. And so that's definitely a direction I focus. And as far as other things, relationships, and I think about this job is more about relationships than I ever anticipated, and I think that's one of my favorite parts about this position is the people I meet, the farmers I meet. How can we together make a difference? How can I share their ideas and thoughts? There's a lot of smart farmers out in the country, and it's great to be able to get to know them and talk to them and hear from them. And the quote, you ready for the quote?
I'm ready.
Okay. The quote that I try to live by, someone told me one time, and it wasn't them that came up with it, but people aren't going to remember what you say, but they're going to remember how you make them feel. And I know I remember that personally. You remember how people make you feel. And so I try to make sure that people feel respected and heard. And I might not be able to answer all the questions or do everything they want, but at least people go away from the conversation, feel respected.
I love it. Marilyn, thank you so very, very much for sharing your great words of wisdom here today. I definitely learned a lot along the way, and I enjoyed learning more about your story and, how you got to where you are. And surprise, surprise, that you are an author / doing all the other things too. So that's just amazing. Speaking of super women, you're definitely one of them. And it's a pleasure to be able to look up to you and chat with you and get your, words of wisdom and advice as another woman in dairy. So that's very appreciated for the day. If people want to connect with you, are you on LinkedIn? Do you have social media, your farm? How would you want people to, follow you?
I am on LinkedIn, or you could get on Facebook. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, just Marilyn Hershey, and LinkedIn's probably the easiest way to connect. So yeah, love to hear from people.
Awesome. And I will link that in the show notes for everyone. Marilyn, thank you so much for coming on today. I appreciate it. And we will see you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. Please be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and leave a review. You can find me on most social media platforms at Dairy Gal Val or online at dairygalval.com. Thank you so much for coming to the Dairy Hour.